Meet PitchDB, the ultimate platform for speakers looking to make their mark on podcasts, conferences, and media outlets. PitchDB provides access to over 3 million platforms, ensuring you find the perfect avenue for your message. With AI integrations, your bios and pitches are tailored uniquely to each opportunity, giving you the edge you need. Join now at pitchdb.com.
Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I am so excited to have Jarrod Lopiccolo on the show today. Jarrod, you and your wife have co-founded some amazing companies, starting with Noble Studios, going to Noble Performs. We're going to talk about some of your philanthropic work, what it's like to work with your partner, and many, many other topics that I think are going to be so highly relevant, particularly because you work with so many organizations that I know my students at USC really love, aspire to work for and love to hear about, such as Adobe, Google, Disney. So thank you, first and foremost, for being here today.
Annika, thank you for having me. As we have connected before, I subscribe to this philosophy of pay it forward. So I love the idea of being able to talk today about our journey and, to your point, all those different topics. And hopefully someone gets, something out of it after running a company with your wife for 20 years. There's definitely some learning lessons that we can put out there in the world. But yeah, just really happy to be here today, and let's kick it off.
Nice. Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
You got a degree in architecture.
Yes.
But you have worked as a graphic designer, developer, marketing roles, and been CEO of a digital company for 20 years. So obviously you've seen a lot of changes in that too. But
yes,
how did you move from architecture into this crazy digital world?
Yeah, it's definitely, when you would consider like an unconventional path, but at the same time, when you hear the story, it'll connect the dots. And so my wife and I, we met in our very last year of university studies. We were actually in a English 404 class. My English was the worst subject for me. So I thought, well, then let's lean into it and invest into it. And we met and we got grouped up on a project. And the whole idea was, being able to really tell the story of a company through whatever medium. And so some people used video, some people used whiteboards and white papers, things. And this is, 20 something years ago. And we decided, let's build a website. There's this new thing called the internet and everyone's using it. And so as a group project, we teamed up and we built a website for us, and I think it was Charles Schwab is what we used as our example to kind of, redesign their image and put it out there. But long story short, what I found was this idea about creating a user experience that you can have digitally. And if you think of an architect, right, an architect is out there, creating a user experience, but physically. And so this idea of physical architecture and virtual architecture, they marry each other. And Season, my wife, friend at the time, then turned to partner, then to wife, and then we started a business. She was going to school for copywriting, and it was in Vegas. And she was working for a large company called R&R Partners, and she was working alongside the team that had created the What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas. So she, is this sort of really leaned into copywriting, and then I was really leaning into sort of, design. And when we built this website, we thought, wow, actually both of our skill sets transition quite well into the digital marketing space. And so from there, I got a job working for a local architecture firm, and then they exposed me to this concept called user-centric design. And it's effectively, if you think of Disney and you think of like a Disney cruise, everywhere you look, there's this Disney paraphernalia, right? Whether it's in the wallpaper or it's in the background music or it's in the silverware, it has little Mickey ears on the back of the spoon. And it's the idea that you can control an experience with a brand at every touch point you have that you interact with that brand. And so we just thought, well, everyone's calling these people, sessions and users, and we actually are seeing people on the internet as humans. How do we create a more authentic human experience? And so we both decided, we fell in love together. We also loved the work that we were doing in the digital space. And so we thought, well, let's just, let's use these digital tools and help build the internet and kind of bring people closer and closer together through valuable, personally relevant experiences. And so that's kind of the beginning, the genesis, the origins of Noble was starting in school, and then both of us having skill sets, but then applying them into a different area.
I wish I had known you all back then, because I was working in magazine publishing at the time, in that time period. And I was going into, AOL music chat rooms to find people to be my street team from music magazine we were launching.
Yes.
And so trying to also figure out ways to connect people in this, offline, online world. Yeah. So it would have been so fascinating to be in the room with you two And I'm so glad that we're meeting now, because obviously you have so much love for what you do still.
Yes.
The energy that you're bringing is amazing. And I'm feeling so pumped for the rest of our interview today. So I had to acknowledge that, because not everybody does that. Not everybody has this excitement coming through. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. Well, I think we just subscribe to this philosophy that life is short and time is kind of one of our only currencies. And so let's make sure we, wake up every day and we spend it appropriately with the right people doing the stuff we do love. And so I think that has been kind of our mantra as we've grown Noble Studios. And it even has led to our tagline of let's be better every day. It's this concept of like, we can always be a little bit better. We can always be a little kinder. We can always lead with a little bit more empathy or sympathy, or authenticity. So I thank you for recognizing that. It is something we subscribe and believe to quite a bit. So,
and all of those words that you're sharing as key values are words that are almost considered buzzwords today, right? We talk about authenticity. We talk about the need for it. We talk about how the generations coming up now want this because they haven't seen it in their marketing. Right. But that's also probably why you're able to scale and be successful and get the attention of these big companies. And it strikes me, it's interesting because I'm having a lot of these conversations right now about user experience and how you design and how you think about the non-user, the atypical user, and what that means, and how do you create better attribution and ways for people to engage with your digital products. And it sounds like these are just things that you two innately understood from an early perspective that not a lot of people did, honestly, when we were building the internet.
Yes. Well, I think, and to your point, I agree with you too. A lot of those keywords that you're using, they do come off unauthentic because they get used so often. And I think, that old saying of like, when no one's around and you do the good deed, right? And so I think it's the same thing. It's like, you can use those words, but if you don't practice them and you don't live and, by them, and then you're right, then they are unauthentic. But I think that's why when we decided to create the company Noble, we wanted to lead with a core value because we knew the internet was going to change. We were talking about AOL. I think at the time we started, it was MySpace and there was no other social media platform. We didn't have smartphones. I think the Trio was out at the time. And so this concept of like, really leaning in and saying, these are humans on the other end of all of this. Let's try to connect. Let's try to bridge that gap. Let's create something that will be attractive to them, the idea of noble and leading with nobility and, waking up and always making sure you're opening the door the next day, even though you did it the day before and holding it for someone. So it's just this concept of just constantly living in a state of like, humility, but also, satisfaction, but maybe fully never content, all the way. And so, you feel like the job's never done. And I think that that's where you turn one corner and you see, hey, there's another opportunity over here to be a good human and connect more people together. And so it just, gets us fired up, allows us to wake up and lead with those kind of core values.
So what was the transition like? Were you doing this more as a side project while you still worked at the architecture firm? And then one day you said, we're ready to just jump in and do this as our full-time gig?
Yeah. So it's, when I reflect back, it feels so easy and like, oh, of course, that just makes sense. But in the moment, to your point, you're like, well, where am I going? And so I finished architecture school, Season finished, school. She's now working at R&R Partners being as a copywriter. I'm working as an architecture firm as not an architect because I was almost becoming an architect, but I was in there doing all the designs and stuff. And at one point, Paul Steelman, who is the owner, came to the group of us and said, hey, listen, we have this opportunity for this restaurant to do everything from, from nose to tail, like and influence every single touch point. And I was assigned, with the team to really kind of run the project. And I just remember this concept of like, which is, you never think of an architect, but he was really designing the plating of the food in this restaurant, like, making sure that the swirl of the sauce looked like the logo and, that the menu was designed and this and the art on the wall and all these different touch points. And then there was a website and I was assigned to help build the website. I thought, well, I did this just recently in college with Season and I can do it now for the architecture firm. And so I did that. And then I realized I really fell in love with it. It was a new frontier, new space, and Season was doing all this great copywriting work and seeing that live in the internet and out in the world and not just on billboards at the time and digital. And so we both kind of looked at each other and said, you know what, we're both out of school. We both love this other path that we have. Why don't we decide to maybe move up north from Vegas to the Reno Tahoe area? We can start a family and we can start a business. We can try this thing out, And so we did. So within like with a year of us graduating, we bought a house, we moved up north, we started Noble Studios, and we got pregnant and got married. So like all those things, like we decided, let's just do it all at once, and then it's behind us, and then we could just use that as our foundation to build off of. And when we started, it was just really about like back, the idea of like community. It was really about like, well, we're here new in the community. How do we really show up in the community? Not from just a sales standpoint and trying to get our message out of our business, but how do we actually act as like community stewards? And so we started joining all of these boards and, as AMA boards or, AFF boards and, just things that were related to our field of expertise. And we started contributing to the community. And that really, really helped saturate us into the market. And then it just, allowed us to further extend the kind of great work that we're doing in those early days. And then, of course, expand beyond your community. And so we started looking at Bay Area because by proximity, we're only 3 hours away. We're within the same time zone. And at the time, people were offshoring a lot of their work. And so we made a joke and say, why don't you inshore it, to us? And then we started, breaking into the Bay Area market and in Silicon Valley. And then at that point, it really started to just, become, our names just started getting passed around to the great work that we were doing. And I think also, it's not just the good work you do, but it's who you are as people, right? People work with people. And so we started showing up with those values and leading with those, and everyone just wanted to work with us. And of course, we didn't take that for granted. We really embraced that. And so that's kind of the origins of kind of how we started a bit and the springboard, if you will, on where, that led to where we are today.
Yeah. Wow, you just answered so many of the questions that I had teed up for you in one fell swoop. So I was really wondering, how did you go from Vegas to Reno, building up in the community there, and then getting the attention of global brands? Because that's not necessarily easy to do. But it sounds like you built your reputation. You just were always showing up as who you were, which is something I emphasize every day to people now. Yes, that's the best way to do business. And so you probably made a shortcut for yourselves of not having to do some of the pitfalls people have of like trying on working with different companies that may not be, the same value add or the same presence. But to that point, when you were building the company and finding all the success and, buying the house and having the baby and getting married and starting the business and growing the business, did you have times when you had to say no to clients? Did you have times when the clients weren't coming in as quickly or the contract times I know can sometimes be really onerous?
These are great early day questions because I think any business that starts out deals with these exact same, kind of concerns. And I think the big thing for us is we've always stayed curious. And with that comes this sort of mantra that we believe in is that if you ask for advice, you often find there's money there. And if you ask for money, you often find that you get advice. So if you enter in a situation and say, hey, I need $10,000 to do this thing. And someone say, well, I don't have that, but I'm going to tell you what you should do. Or if you come in and explain what you want to do and you're asking for advice, oftentimes say, well, and if you need help, doing that, let me know and I can help you. And so I think we always stayed curious and we leaned in and we just asked for advice and we stayed humble in those early days. And I think, at the time, no one was really in the digital marketing space. There was advertisement and there was sort of traditional marketing, but the digital side was new. And it was either classified as you were a web development shop or you were an advertising or marketing agency. And we wanted to be both. We wanted to be able to provide brand. We wanted to be able to provide, performance marketing services like SEO and SEM and, all those others. And we wanted to also build digital experiences through, web and other infrastructures at the time. And so I think, when we got our first kind of foot in the door into the Bay Area, we just really leaned in hard. We thought this is our chance. And it was with this big company called Autodesk. They're a really large 2D, 3D software company. I think they're in the Fortune 500s or less. And we just did a really good job. They asked us to kind of do this one piece of work and we gave them a bit of I think it was $5,000. And it was probably $100,000 worth of work that we did for $5,000. But we were like, this is it. This is our big shot, right? We're playing in the big league now. And then all of a sudden, a couple years into all that relationship, and we got a few other ones based on proximity of those relationships. But then the recession hit of, the 2008, 2009, and an Autodesk had a really large layoff. And like most companies did at that time, they tightened up. And then all of a sudden, about 6-8 months later, we started getting these phones started ringing. And now no one rings the phone, right? It's a Zoom ring or an email, but the phone started ringing. And it was like, hey, remember we used to work together at Autodesk? I'm now over at Disney, or hey, I'm now over at Microsoft, or hey, I'm over at Cisco or Intel, or whatever, you name it. And it was just this moment of time where we just thought, oh my gosh, this is our moment to capitalize. And I think this is the challenge, right? Is that to your earlier question, we didn't say no. We just said yes to everything. And that actually created an imbalance, right, in our personal life, because all of a sudden you're putting the business first and you're capitalizing on it. And it's so easy to be like, yeah, but I know, but it's Disney, like I'm going to work this weekend because Disney has this thing for us, or Adobe has this thing for us. And so with that success came some, not like to a point where we discussed like a divorce or anything like that. And when you work with your partner, but to a point where like, look, we're in balance. We're not really, focusing as much attention on the family side and the personal relationship as much as we are on the business side. And I remember there was a very distinctive moment, and you can imagine it's December 5th, it's a Friday night, and we have what's called the tree lighting ceremony, and it lights up the downtown Carson City, the capital of Nevada, and Santa comes down with the sleigh. And at this time we have two kids, right? 4 years old and 2 years old. And it's Friday night at 5:00 is when the lights go on. And I'm in the office at 4:00 and with the team, and we got a deadline. We're getting to a deadline. In season, went home, got the kids, and came back. And she's like, okay, let's go down. Let's watch the tree lighting ceremony. And I'm like, I don't think I can make it, and I started putting business first, right, over those moments. And so she left, not happy, of course, and I'm now sitting there with like, well, what do I do? Like just in this stalemate moment. And my team said, what are you doing, Jarrod? Get out there. We've got this taken care of, And at that moment, that was the turning moment of like saying, okay, you know what? I actually have to find a lot more balance in life. And so from there on, you can see I have a lot of bracelets, those that are watching this. And the very first bracelet I got said family first. And it was just a daily reminder that, you know what, like if you're not healthy in your personal life, you can't be healthy in your business life. And if you think of your life in cups, like all the different cups, community and friends and family and personal interest and, love and, all those things, they all have to have equal amounts of investment into them. And what I was doing was pouring all my energy into the one cup, and it was just overflowing. And so you can imagine that imbalance. So right then it was a moment to say, okay, we've got success. You've got to start to learn to say no. You've got to start to learn to put boundaries in place, even though you're on this sort of rocket right now, and make sure that you put family first, because that's what's going to last the longest is likely family as opposed to businesses. And so that was kind of a big turning point in some lessons. Hopefully someone can learn along the way is, find that balance, but don't do it to a point where I hate to say this, don't start out where it's all balanced equally. I think you really need to invest a lot into your business if you're an entrepreneur to understand if it's going to work. Mm-hmm. And even though it might be like a ton of time, 80-hour work weeks, for 2 years, that's going to be the difference of saying, is it going to work in 2 years? Or do I have to spend 5 years learning this lesson that it's going to work or it's not going to work? And so I do believe you need to really lean in hard when you're starting a business, but then surface and then start to find that balance with your family. I don't know if you would have as much success equally off if you just created all those cups and all those cups were equally filled. I just don't know. But I don't know. That wasn't my journey, so I can't speak on that. So
what was it like because you mentioned your team.
Yes.
How long did it take for you to decide, we need to start hiring people? And was it easy to find local talent? Because you mentioned also that a lot of these companies that you work with were offshoring, and you were like, no, we have a lot of talent right here. Use us instead.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of those moments where I think if you're an entrepreneur, you're usually, or even just a leader, right? You're usually really good at something. And you're going to, at some point, hit a capacity that you can no longer do that, whether it's time hits you or skill set or commitments or whatnot. And at that point, you have to be able to delegate, and you have to be able to set those up that are going to take on those things you were really good at. You got to set them up for success. And like Brene Brown, she talks about, what does paint done look like? So you've got to really set them up and say, hey, this is what paint done looks like, and then you got to give trust and relinquish that trust over, and that full delegation of like, I trust you. You're going to maybe even do it different than me, and maybe not as good as me right away. But if you own that over time, you will do it better than me, every day, because that consistency will override that infrequent touching, in and out. And so I think you have to develop a mindset of saying, you know what, some other people are out there that are smarter than me and can do things better than me, but they don't maybe want to be the leader, or they don't maybe want to be the entrepreneur. And that's your role, is to really be that. So I think first is that mindset. Then I think, to your point, when you think about us, making the sort of claim of, hey, inshore to us, we have this amazing talent, and it's just as good as Bay Area talent or Silicon Valley talent. We really had to grow the talent here in the Reno, sort of Tahoe area. It was heavily dominated at the time by casino and that kind of thing. You didn't have the sophistication of tech or even the marketeers, these professional marketers 20 something years ago. And so there was some pockets of it, but not a lot. And so what we adopted was this sort of noble university sort of mindset of like, okay, well, we're going to bring you in. If you have the right skill sets, and or mindset, we can enhance either one of those. But if you didn't have that sort of initial ingredients of passion and purpose and just, love for the industry, we can't grow that. And that's just, and so we learned that early on as well and I'm sure a lot of people learned that as well during the pandemic where there was shortage of talent and things like that. They're like, I'll just bring someone in, and they're realizing these weren't maybe the right people at the time to bring in or hard to grow those. And so for us, it was really about like, we didn't have the talent here, so let's grow it. And the good news is now, I think with other agencies and other companies and just the maturity of the digital marketing space, you're finding this talent in every parts of the world, especially when you see this work-life balance that everyone is, seeking. You're going to find people not in these big metropolitan urban areas. You're going to find them in, in some of the rural areas or the far distant lands that now have internet through, through Starlink and things like that. And so I don't know if everyone's experiencing maybe what we would have experienced 20 years ago. But yeah, at the time it was to grow the talent and then really invest into the talent, invest into the culture. And yeah, and it worked. It worked. If I were to do it again, in today's date, I would say it would be really about finding the right people, then figuring out what seats they're going to fit in, as opposed to saying, we're missing a web developer, we're missing a marketer, a performance marketer, or missing an SEO. Instead, I would say, starting over, I'd say, just get us the right people, because you could teach this stuff pretty quickly now with YouTubes and, all the different classes and trainings and AI and everything else. And so it's all about making sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people,
I love that approach, because that's something that happened to me during the pandemic. I ended up building up an agency. I was like, we're just going to do a PR agency. And then quickly realized, this person said they can do PR, but that's not really what they love doing. They love doing this other thing. And we do need that for clients. So let's put them in that place instead so they can grow and really have that passion every day when they come to work.
Yep.
So I do think that's so important. And it is funny because when I think of the Tahoe area, I think about snowboarding.
Yes. Yes.
Right? I think about it as like vacation land. And then of course, now we all want to live in places that give us that peace when we come home as well. And so that we can try to incorporate more of that balance without being overt, right? Being able to say, I might have to work 60 hours this week, but look at how beautiful it is outside.
Exactly. And I think that is why truly we're attracting the type of talent we are today, because, we live in an area, to your point, it's a playground. I mean, even this morning, my wife and our daughter, we were saying, well, what are we going to go to our cabin tonight? It's a 45-minute drive to our cabin in the Sierras. And we're going to get there and we're going to watch some movies and, or pick up a show, and then we're going to go to the hot springs tomorrow and then maybe do a little skiing, and then we're back to our house. And so there's so much access to this area, and everyone truly, when we hire them, not that we use this as a filter, but it's amazing that when we hire people and we're asking them questions, in their first day with the crew and seeing everyone on Zoom, we're like, what's your favorite thing to do? And what are your hobbies? And it's no surprise that people are like, I love to hike. I love to snowboard or ski. I love to snowshoe. I love to ice skate. I love to whatever, camp, you name it. And this area truly has, and a lot of areas have it. And so I think it's really now, and I'm so excited about the new world we're in, because it really is about this work-life balance, and I do believe, and this is where maybe some people will differ, but I do think that you should be defined by your job to a certain degree, right? If you love your job, you should tell people about it. If I'm a chef, I should tell people that I'm a chef and I'm working for whatever, a Michelin star, or just I run a taco truck, or whatever it is, and be proud about what you do for a living and not think that your whole life has to be defined just by the personal hobbies you have. I think you can have the both of them. And whereas I feel like, a long time ago, it was just sort of, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was always like, well, this is what I do, and I don't really have a big personal life. I'll wait to do my personal life when I retire. And then I think the pendulum swung so far that it was like that, Gen Zs or millennials or even some of the Xers are like, no, I don't want to be defined by my job. I only want to be defined by my work or my personal playtime and stuff. And I think that the real value is when you can, that full spectrum, when you can embrace the full spectrum of like, I am proud of what I do for my work and I don't mind being defined by it. And I'm also really proud for what I do in my personal life. And I like to be defined by that as well. And I think that's the real whole person, I think, that will come out of the pendulum going back and forth is not to shame the job or, only work 3-4 days a week. And it's like, because I think you get a lot of value out of like putting yourself out there and growing in the professional world and making those deeper, meaningful connections and things like that. So that, I think that's the new whole person that we're going to see kind of emerging out of this pendulum swinging back and forth is that you really do have a work-life balance. And it's not because work gives you a personal life. It's because you get value out of both parts of your life. Exactly.
It's so funny. Everything that you're saying is stuff I've been having conversations about recently or thinking about, or that I've been talking to people about recently. So this conversation is so full of kismet. I just did a workshop for Red Bull employees who are kind of newer in the field about that merging of personal brand with professional presence in the workplace and how you have to be the same person, and you're not one person at work and one person. So that spectrum is something that I think is very top of mind for a lot of these organizations, and seeing that this is something that their newer employees need to learn and to utilize to be able to skill up and to be the best they can be in everything they do. But then also that gives them more confidence to be able to take that next role in the company.
That's right. Yep. Well, and I think when you think about the future of, people and sort of their contribution to the world, I think the ones that will succeed the most have that wide spectrum. They have depth in all of those, parts of their life. And so I do feel that it is this new, this new wave of people that are coming into the world and sort of awakening and saying, I can have both. I think that's just so critical, and I think it will help you get to the next job because you're really expanding that sort of EQ, if you will. You're really getting a deeper, wider spectrum of EQ as well. Because otherwise, if it's just all leaning really back to those cups, if it's just really leaning heavy into one, well, then you're just not as diverse, as a human. And then you're not as inclusive either because you've only got one area that's just leaning real heavy. And so I subscribe to living the whole life, in every area. And if you don't like what you're doing, then change it. The worst, that's the other thing I think that all of us have come out of the pandemic with is this idea that, hey, I could get another job, or I could move to another location, or, experiment into it, some other field of expertise. I mean, so many people we knew went, left digital marketing as well and went into baking and, opened a restaurant, or joined a family business or started a business. And it was I just love when disruption like that happens because it allows for a healthy reset for everyone to kind of re-anchor themselves back to what they value and where's their contribution and what to be known for, back to life is short,
And it just opens up space for the creativity that is flowing out there and for people to grab the right opportunity. So speaking about that, you started Noble Studios 20 years ago. Congratulations for the longevity.
Thank you.
There's not a lot of agencies that have been able to do that. And pre-pandemic, then you also started Noble Performs.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about that because I see that as an outgrowth of your creativity and you all wanting to put more into the world. And then also now you have Noble Deeds.
Yes.
As a whole other element. So what was that expansion process like? What was the impetus behind it?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs relate and get excited about is the idea of creation. Is this idea that you see a need and you can fill it, or a demand, and you know how to answer to the demand that's out there. And so 20 years ago, we started Noble. About 10 years in, we thought, after sitting on a lot of these board of directors or advisory groups and stuff, we saw their hardest thing was communication and getting their message out there. And so we thought, what if we created, and this is actually a brainchild of Seasons, she thought, what if we created this philanthropic program, this sort of Patagonia, donate 1% of your time, let your people go surfing, this whole mindset of giving back and paying it forward. She thought, what if we created, a way of donating our time and what we're really good at? And I truly subscribe to the fact that you can't just be a successful, leader and only take. You have to give. In fact, you probably have to give a lot more than you take, and the more you put out there, the more you'll probably get in return. But we were thinking, well, how can we help our community? And I remember, Season organized this thing where Lake Tahoe, they have what's called the Tahoe Rim Trail, and you hike it, well, there's a lot of people that need to help work on that trail and move boulders and, build steps. And, where there's a little cliff, you build some rock steps so no one falls. And so she thought, well, why don't we do a camping trip with all of our employees and we'll build on this trail? And we started hammering, and you can imagine we're all, kind of dorks and geeks and, we're none of us are really strong. We've got, none of us have calluses on our hands. And so we're out there swinging axes and picks and shovels. And I think we got about a quarter of a mile worth of trail work done in a whole week, and not a lot compared to those that can do this really well. And I remember she thought, this is good. We're doing good things, but we could probably be better. And I think we can probably bring our whole selves, what we're really good at, all of our skill sets. We could probably bring that further into the community. And we thought, well, what better way than to provide what we're already good at to the community? And so then she birthed this idea of Noble Deeds and this concept of giving our services away to nonprofits. And so that was created 10 years ago, 10 years into our mission of running Noble. And now it's an employee-led, fully employee-led program. There's applications. In fact, we're actually in the process right now of asking for applications to come in, and then we'll go through a very deep selection process, and then we'll select a nonprofit. And then from there, we put all of our stuff in. Maybe they need a website. Maybe they need more performance marketing. Maybe their brand needs to be reimagined, or their logo, or their name of their company. But when we're done, and each year we give about $200,000 to $250,000 worth of services. When we're done, they come out polished, right? And there's so many great stories that have come out once we've done that work. Other organizations take them serious, or grants they can now get because of it. Or maybe they attract new board members because it's a professional looking, institute at this time. And so that was really the sort of, the start of Noble Deeds. And then we thought, okay, we're affecting people positively with this philanthropic community program we created. Our brand is strong. Our culture is strong. How do we further extend this? How do we get more people exposed to it? Yes, there's a commercial aspect to it. We'll grow in revenue and we'll get profits, But at the end of the day, we're going to really expose our brand in a positive way and affect people positively with Noble and that sort of nobility and all of our core values and such. So we had an opportunity with an employee who worked for us who was British and said, hey, look, I'm looking to move back to the UK. And, she had a very entrepreneurial mindset. And we thought, well, what if we tried something out? What if we actually thought of creating an office over there where we can extend, services and products and experiences of our, American companies that we work with into the UK, EMEA, and or APEC market, and vice versa. Those that want to get into the United States or into America or specific states in America, we can create a vehicle that'll allow us to bring those products, goods, and experiences over. And so we launched it, and back to that mantra of asking for advice and you'll get money. We just went around and asked all of these agencies. So we said, what would you do if you were in our shoes, if you were to create an agency here that had an American, parent company? And everyone gave us so much good advice, and they didn't see us as threats. If anything, they saw us as, partners and allies, and they felt they were part of our foundation and building over there. And now I'm proud to, say that we've been there, over 5 years in market. We've hit that 1 million pound, mark, which is really hard to hit over in that market. It's a smaller population. It's not as entrepreneurial as the United States is and stuff, but we're doing really well. And in fact, I'm leaving in just a few days to head over there to be with the board and the team and clients and then all those experiences. So,
wow. What's next? What's left for Noble?
Yeah, I know. People are like, when are you going to stop? No, what I feel truly, I would say that my wife and I, my friends and family, they view us as successful. Okay, if that was what we were going for, boom, we can check the box. We're financially stable. Our retirements are set up, but the mission's not done yet, right? I feel like we have a mission. We've created something that is different than other agencies, and we've created a culture. We were just recognized by Ad Age, Best Places to Work, for 2023 and 2024. Huge. And truly, it's our team that brings that level of culture to the table, and we just help foster it and nurture it and be a part of it. And we just thought, we're still kind of in our early earning years, and I just want to grow. I want to grow. I not for the sake of selling either. I want to grow. So we're looking at potentially acquiring some other agencies right now where I've made this sort of statement a few times about the idea of a 24-hour agency, and that not that we want our people working 24 hours, but that we would have in time zones, we would be able to cover the 24-hour clock. And part of that is that, just more exposure to brands, more exposure to good humans and people. And so I feel like that's really where we're at now. We're saying, okay, we're out of the pandemic. We've got a really healthy culture. We got a really healthy foundation. Our services are relevant. We're constantly getting feedback through surveys about our culture and our clients. So we feel like we're in this really good position to grow because we want to influence more people and create more meaningful connections. That's our charter right now. How long we'll go for? Maybe it'll continue, and maybe 30 years I retire, but the company keeps going. Who knows? But the intent is more exposure of our brand and what we've created, because we're constantly working on it, and we feel that it's healthy, it's refreshing for people, and so we just want to expose more of it to more people.
That's so beautiful. I love it. I love that you still feel aspirational.
Yes.
Although you are very inspirational at the same time. Now, I want to say, are either of the kids going to enter the family business? Because my daughter's in high school and she's going to get her PhD in neuroscience, but not to be a marketer. She wants to study brain anomalies and things, and nothing to do with what mom does, right?
Yes.
So, are your kids interested in the same things? Or do they want to chart their own path because they've seen such a great example from their parents?
Yeah, it's, we joke a lot. We always say having entrepreneurial kids are very different, right? They grew up kind of hearing about, clients, employees, like a truck went by. And I remember our son was like 6 years old. He's like, Dad, what do you think's in that truck? And because he knows that truck has to pick up goods and drop it off. And so both of our kids, on the early days, we told them, we never want you to take over this business. It's so damn hard. And it's a hard thing to do. And so we sort of like took it out of their idea. And so now our son's at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and he's studying business management. And then all of a sudden he's in his second year, and now he picked up an entrepreneurial study. And I'm like, oh no, he's getting closer to where, because he's gravitating towards it. And our daughter, she's a junior in high school. She's actually a musician, and she just launched her second album on Spotify. And she's speaking actually in like a few days in Las Vegas. She's going to be speaking at a women's conference. She just launched her song, I Am Woman. And so she's going to be speaking there. So they're both like on their own course, right? They're both on their own course. But it's funny because like over the last kind of maybe 2 years, they both said something a little bit like, hey, well, maybe if that doesn't work, we can always take over the business or go into the business. And it's still, I put up like, I feel like it's like I put the cross up, like, no, like, stay away, vampires, like you don't want to. Because it's such it's a life, it's a life experience. It's really, once you're an entrepreneur, it's really hard to like not be one, right? And that's why we're creating things left and right, because it's in our DNA, and it's sort of like the Matrix. Once you're exposed to the Matrix, you're like exposed to it. You can't go unsee it again. And so yeah, I think right now they're on their own courses. They're both successful. They're both really great humans. We want them to only be out there of like identifying where there's a demand and where you can bring your whole self and your authentic self. And again, we don't even care if it's, make money or not. It's just, are you going to be happy? And if that path leads them back to Noble Studios in some form or another, as long as that they're happy, that's all that we kind of care about,
Yeah. Wow. Definitely going to obviously put your information in the show notes so people can also, because I do have a lot of nonprofits that listen who'd probably be very interested.
Yes, please.
Noble Needs and other people who will want to find out how they can work with you and just more about your services. And there's so much we didn't get into, but our time is short. So we're going to have to pick up this conversation and do another episode later. And also you're going to come on and speak for the USC series, Mediascape.
Yes.
I do want to ask, do you have a favorite quote or mantra, family motto, any words of wisdom that you live by that really drive you every day?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. I think one of the challenges is that I will suck all the air out of the cockpit, because of me being Italian and passionate. And so I want to apologize for those that are out there if they were trying to.
No apologies.
But no, thank you for having the show. I do look forward to having a future show. I would say the big thing for me is about follow your passion, and opportunities will be there for you. But, if you don't follow your passions and you just follow the money, oftentimes those opportunities won't show up. So just really follow your passions. Life is short. Time's your only currency. Spend it with the right people, doing the right stuff, and everything will work itself out. But make sure you're really following your passion. Even if it means you want to be a marine biologist and there's no money on the other end of that, it doesn't matter. Find opportunities by charting your course, by what you love, as opposed to following the money trail. So
amazing. Jarrod Lopiccolo, thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you to the audience for listening to another inspiring entrepreneurship journey. I know that I feel energized and ready to tackle the world now after speaking to Jarrod. And there's so much insightful information that came out of this episode. So I hope that you all feel as inspired as I do. And I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert to share their story. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.